The message came on a Tuesday. It arrived at every major radio telescope on Earth at exactly the same time. The stars had been silent for so long that many had given up hope of finding anyone else out there. But now, the silence was broken. Dr. Samantha Wright was drinking her third cup of coffee when the alert sounded. As the lead science at NASA, she had spent 15 years listening to the stars. 15 years of nothing. Until today. "We have a confirmed signal," said her assistant, Peter. His hand shook as he handed her the printout. "It's not random. It's not a pulsar. It's a message." Samantha nearly dropped her coffee. "Where is it coming from?" "Everywhere," Peter whispered. "The same signal is hitting every receiver on the planet simultaneously." Within hours, Samantha was on a flight to Washington. By the time she landed, the president had already called an emergency meeting. Leaders from around the world joined through secure video links. "What do we know?" asked President Harrington, her face tight with concern. Samantha stood up. "The message is complex but structured. It contains mathematical sequences we recognize, followed by what appears to be a language primer. Whoever sent this wants us to understand them." "How long until we can translate it?" someone asked. "Days, maybe weeks," Samantha replied. "But they've made it surprisingly accessible." They didn't need weeks. 3 days later, Samantha and her international team had enough of the message decoded to understand its importance. "They call themselves the Galactic Cooperative," she explained to the assembled world leaders. "An alliance of 47 spacefaring species. They'd been watching Earth for centuries." The room erupted in shocked whispers. President Harrington raised her hand for silence. "What do they want?" Samantha took a deep breath. "They say it's time for humanity to be evaluated. Every intelligent species must pass what they call the threshold test to join the galactic community." "What kind of test?" asked the British Prime Minister. "Unknown, but they've included records of previous species' performances." Samantha pulled up a chart on the screen. "No species has ever achieved a perfect score. Most barely pass the minimum requirements of 60%. And if we fail?" The question came from the Chinese president, his face grave on the video screen. "They don't say," Samantha admitted. But reading between the lines, species that fail seem to be restricted, limited to their home systems, denied certain technologies. NASA Director Jack Miller spoke up. "We have 1 year to prepare. They'll send a ship to collect 3 representatives of our choosing. Only 3 people to represent all of humanity." The Indian Prime Minister sounded alarmed. "Yes," Samantha confirmed. 3 people who will determine our place in the galaxy." In the days that followed, news of the alien message spread across the world. Some people panicked. Others celebrated. Religious groups argued about what it meant for their beliefs. Scientists worked around the clock to understand more of the message. Samantha barely slept. Each new section of the message they decoded revealed more about the test and the stakes involved. One night, as she stared at the data, she noticed something odd. "Look at these results," she told Jack, pointing to her screen. "Every species fails in different areas, but there's always some part of the test where they excel. It's almost as if..." "As if what?" Jack asked, leaning closer. "As if the test is designed so that no one can ace it," Samantha said slowly. "But why design an impossible test?" Jack frowned. "Maybe to keep new species in their place." Samantha looked out her window at the night sky, now forever changed. 1 year, she whispered. "We have 1 year to prepare for a test that no one has ever passed. And somehow, we need to be the first." The world changed overnight after the announcement. Countries that had been enemies for generations suddenly found common ground. Everyone wanted a say in who would represent Earth. "We should send our top scientists," argued the Russian delegate at the global selection meeting. "No, our most decorated military officers," countered the American general. "Perhaps our wisest political leaders," suggested the African Union representative. Jack Miller listened to them argue for hours. As NASA director, He had been tasked with leading the selection committee. The burden felt impossibly heavy. After the meeting, he found Samantha in her temporary office at the United Nations building. "They'll never agree," he said, dropping into a chair. "Every country wants their people to be chosen." Samantha looked up from her computer. "I've been studying the data from previous tests. There's something we're missing." She turned her screen to show him. "Look at these species. The Zerathidi scored highest on logic, but failed on empathy. The Kelba excelled at creativity, but couldn't handle the adaptation trials." "What's your point?" Jack asked. "What if we don't send our best by traditional standards? What if we send people with different ways of thinking, different strengths?" Her eyes lit up with excitement. "What if that's the key?" Jack considered this. A team with diverse cognitive approaches. "Exactly," Samantha nodded. "And I have some candidates in mind." The first was Alan Carter, a quantum physicist whose mild autism gave him a unique way of seeing patterns others missed. When Samantha and Jack visited his lab, they found him working on 5 equations simultaneously. "A test designed by aliens," Alan said after they explained. "Fascinating. Their logic might be entirely different from ours." He agreed to join without hesitation. The second was Maria Diaz, a cultural anthropologist who specialized in nonverbal communication. She had spent decades living with isolated human tribes, learning to understand people without words. "Every culture communicates differently," she told them over dinner at her small apartment. "But there are always patterns, always connections." Her quiet confidence was exactly what they needed. The final candidate took longer to track down. Owen Gray had been a Navy SEAL before studying philosophy. Now he lived in a cabin in Montana, teaching survival skills to troubled teens. "You want me to represent humanity to aliens?" he asked, raising an eyebrow. He poured them coffee from a battered pot. "Why me?" "Because you adapt," Samantha explained. "Your military record shows it. Your life choices show it. You survive and thrive in any situation." Owen thought for a long time before answering. "When do we start?" 3 months later, the team moved to a training facility in the Colorado mountains. They studied everything known about the aliens and practiced with simulations based on the limited information about the test. Alan struggled with teamwork at first, but his insights were invaluable. Maria brought a sense of perspective, always reminding them to consider different viewpoints. Owen pushed them physically and mentally, insisting they train for the unexpected. One evening, after a particularly difficult simulation, the 3 sat around a campfire outside the facility. "Do you think we can really do this?" Maria asked, watching the flames. "The odds are against us," Alan replied honestly. "Based on historical data, we have perhaps a 12% chance of achieving a significantly better score than previous species." Owen poked the fire, sending sparks into the night sky. "Maybe that's the point. Maybe we're supposed to face something impossible." "Why?" Maria asked. "To see what we do when there's no good answer," Owen said. "To see if we keep trying anyway." Above them, stars filled the sky. Somewhere up there, the Galactic Cooperative waited. 6 months remained until the test. 6 months to prepare for the impossible. The alien ship arrived exactly 1 year after the first message. It descended from the clouds above the United Nations headquarters in New York, silent and smooth. It was shaped like a perfect sphere, its surface shimmering with colors that seemed to shift and change. Thousands of people gathered to watch. Millions more viewed it on screens around the world. Alan, Maria, and Owen stood on a platform with world leaders, waiting. A door appeared in the side of the ship, opening like an iris. Out stepped a being unlike anything humans had seen before. It walked on 4 legs, its body covered in iridescent scales. 2 sets of arms emerged from its torso, and its head was dominated by large, multifaceted eyes. "I am Captain Zixtal," it said, its voice translated through a small device at what might have been its throat. "I will transport Earth's representatives to Proxima Station for the threshold test." President Harrington stepped forward. "These are our chosen representatives. They carry with them the hopes of all humanity. Zixtal's eyes swiveled to examine the three humans. They appear inadequate, it said. But appearances can be deceiving. We shall see. The goodbyes were brief. The three humans had already said proper farewells to their families. Now they simply nodded to the officials, picked up their small bags of permitted items, and followed Zixtal into the ship. Inside, the vessel was larger than it appeared from outside. Their quarters were simple but comfortable, clearly adapted for human needs. The journey would take 3 months by the alien calendar. Your species is young, Zixtal told them during their first meal aboard. The captain ate strange crystals that dissolved in a blue liquid. Most species that reach the threshold test have been developing technology for at least twice as long as humans. Does that mean we're at a disadvantage? Maria asked. Zixtal made a clicking sound that might have been laughter. You are already at a disadvantage. No species passes with high marks. It is the way of things. During the long journey, they learned more about previous tests. The Durrani, a species of gas giant dwellers, scored 82%, but failed the empathy sections. The Voltar, insect-like beings from a desert world, reached 78%, but struggled with creative solutions. No species has scored above 87%, Zixtal told them. Most hover around 65 to 70%. Owen spent hours in the ship's exercise area, adapting to the slightly different gravity. Maria studied the ship's database on galactic cultures. Alan pored over the limited information about the test itself. One night, as Earth time would measure it, Alan called the others to his quarters. I've been analyzing the test results of previous species, he said, showing them diagrams he had drawn. There's a pattern. What kind of pattern? Owen asked. Every species succeeds in areas aligned with their evolutionary advantages and fails where they have evolutionary blind spots, Alan explained. But the test always includes all categories. Maria frowned. So it's designed so that no species can excel at everything. Precisely, Alan nodded. It's statistically improbable that any species would naturally develop peak abilities in all tested areas. So the test is rigged, Owen said. It's meant to be impossible to ace. But why? Maria wondered. They had no answer to that question. As they neared the end of their journey, they got their first glimpse of Proxima Station. It was enormous, a ring-shaped structure orbiting a distant neutron star. Lights sparkled along its surface, and ships of various designs moved around it like fish in a cosmic sea. That's where we'll be tested, Maria whispered, looking out the viewport. Yes, Zixtal said, coming up behind them. That is where all species learn their place in the galactic order. The captain's eyes fixed on the humans. The question is, what will your place be? The ship moved toward the station, carrying 3 humans toward a test no species had ever aced. A test that might have been designed to be impossible. Proxima Station was even more impressive up close. As they docked, the 3 humans saw hundreds of different ships and countless alien species moving through the vast structure. They were met by a tall, thin being with pale blue skin and 6 fingers on each hand. I am Keylorn, Test Administrator, it said in a soft, melodic voice. Follow me to your preparation chambers. The halls of the station were filled with strange sights and sounds. Aliens of every shape and size moved about their business. Some nodded at the humans. Others stared. A few made gestures that might have been rude. You are the 48th species to reach this point, Keylorn told them as they walked. The threshold test has remained unchanged since the founding of the cooperative. What exactly will we be tested on? Owen asked. Keylorn stopped at a door marked with unfamiliar symbols. The test consists of 7 trials. Each examines a different quality: logic, empathy, creativity, adaptability, cooperation, ethical reasoning, and a final challenge I cannot describe beforehand. The preparation chambers were comfortable. The humans had 1 day to rest before the test began. None of them slept well. The next morning, They were led to a large circular room. The walls were lined with viewing galleries where dozens of aliens watched. K'Lorn stood in the center, waiting. The first trial tests logic, K'Lorn announced. You must solve a puzzle that changes as you progress. A holographic display appeared, showing a complex maze of symbols and pathways. As Alan reached out to touch it, the patterns shifted. It's adaptive, Alan muttered. It responds to our attempts to solve it. For nearly an hour, they worked on the puzzle. Each time they made progress, the rules seemed to change. Alan focused intensely, his fingers moving rapidly as he tracked patterns invisible to the others. There's a mathematical progression, he said suddenly. Not in the symbols, but in the spaces between them. His fingers flew faster. The watching aliens murmured as the humans progressed further than expected. Alan finally pressed a sequence of symbols, and the entire display glowed green. K'Lorn's face showed no emotion, but its voice carried a hint of surprise. First trial completed successfully. Few species recognized the hidden pattern. The second trial tested empathy. They were placed in a room with a creature that could not speak or write. Somehow, they needed to understand what it needed. Maria took the lead. Watch its movements, she told the others. Look for repeated gestures. The creature was blob-like, changing colors and shapes. Maria observed carefully, then began to mimic its movements. Slowly, a form of communication developed. It's thirsty, Maria realized, but not for water. It needs light of a specific frequency. When they provided the correct light source, the creature glowed happily. The trial was complete. The third trial tested creativity. They faced a scenario where a planetary ecosystem was collapsing. Standard solutions had failed. We need to think differently, Owen said. Not just fix the problem, but change how we see it. They proposed using the planet's natural volcanic activity to seed the atmosphere with minerals that would jumpstart new plant growth. It wasn't a solution any previous species had tried. As the third trial ended, whispers spread through the observation gallery. K'Lorn conferred with other officials, their voices low but urgent. What's happening? Maria asked. I think we're doing better than expected, Owen replied. Alan studied the scoring display on the wall. According to my calculations, we've achieved perfect scores on the first 3 trials. Is that unusual? Maria wondered. Based on what we know of previous results, Alan said, it's unprecedented. K'Lorn returned, its pale face now tinged with a darker blue. We will proceed to the 4th trial, it announced. Please prepare yourselves. In the observation gallery, aliens leaned forward, their attention fully captured by the unexpected performance of the humans. No one had seen anything like this before. No one had expected humans to excel where every other species had struggled. The 4th trial began after a short break. K'Lorn led the humans to a chamber with strange machinery. This trial tests adaptability, K'Lorn explained. You will experience rapid environmental changes. You must not only survive but complete tasks in each environment. The chamber sealed. Suddenly, the temperature dropped to freezing. Ice formed on the walls. The human's breath became visible in the cold air. First task, K'Lorn's voice announced through speakers. Build a heat source using only materials in the room. Owen took charge immediately. Check every corner, he ordered through chattering teeth. Look for anything we can use. They found metal scraps, some wire, and crystals embedded in the walls. Owen arranged the materials while Alan calculated the optimal configuration. This should create friction when assembled correctly, Alan said, his fingers stiff with cold. Within minutes, they had a working heat source. As soon as it activated, the room transformed again. Now it was blazing hot, like a desert at noon. Second task, find water. Maria pointed to plants that had appeared in the corners. These are succulents. They store water. She showed the others how to extract moisture from the plants. They collected enough water to drink. The room changed again, becoming a low-gravity environment. Through 5 more environmental changes, the humans adapted quickly. Owen's survival training proved invaluable. When the trial ended, even Keylorn seemed impressed. 4th trial completed with exceptional results, the administrator announced. The 5th trial proved most difficult. They entered a chamber where 3 other alien species waited. These aliens had previously taken the test and scored poorly. This trial tests cooperation, Keylorn said. You must build a structure with these species, but they have been instructed to resist your efforts. The aliens were hostile from the start. One, a reptilian being, refused to even acknowledge the humans. Another, a creature made of what looked like living crystal, deliberately sabotaged their early attempts. This isn't working, Maria whispered after 30 minutes of frustration. We're approaching it wrong, Owen realized. We're trying to complete our task despite them. We need to find common ground. Maria began studying the aliens' interactions with each other. The reptile defers to the crystal being, she noted, and both ignore the third one. Alan observed the third alien, a small fuzzy creature with multiple eyes. This one keeps trying to contribute but gets shut out. Owen approached the fuzzy alien first, asking for help. Surprised by the respect, it eagerly showed them a better way to connect the building materials. Maria used this cooperation to interest the reptilian being, appealing to its apparent need for efficiency. The crystal being held out longest, but eventually joined when it became clear the structure was succeeding without its input. When they finished, Keylorn's assistant whispered something to the administrator. Keylorn's blue skin darkened with what might have been concern. The 6th trial tested ethical reasoning. The humans faced a simulation of 2 planets at war. They were told they must choose which civilization would survive. The other would be destroyed. This is a false choice, Owen said after studying the scenario. We're meant to pick one and sacrifice the other. There's always another option, Maria insisted. Alan studied the data. If we reconfigure the planetary defense systems, we could create a shield that protects both worlds. But we'd need to position ourselves at the focal point, Owen realized. We'd be sacrificing our safety for theirs. They chose this third option. When the simulation ended, showing both civilizations surviving, a commotion broke out in the observation gallery. Keylorn's assistants huddled around the administrator, their voices urgent. What's happening? Maria asked. I believe, Alan said quietly, we're doing something no species has done before. We're refusing to accept the limitations built into the test. Keylorn approached them, its movements stiff. You will now rest before the final trial, it said. The 7th trial will begin tomorrow. As they were led away, they heard Keylorn speaking to another official. Contact the council. They need to witness this. The humans slept poorly that night. Their quarters on the station felt colder somehow, and station personnel kept walking past their door, peering in at them. They're worried, Owen said as they ate breakfast. We're not following the script. By morning, the observation gallery had filled completely. New aliens had arrived, wearing elaborate robes and jewelry that suggested importance. They watched the humans with intense, unblinking eyes. Keylorn entered with 2 assistants. The 7th trial will now begin. This is the final and most important test. They followed Keylorn into a chamber larger than any they had seen before. In the center stood a simple pedestal with a small device on it. This trial has no name, Keylorn said. It simply is. When you activate this device, you will experience a simulation of extinction-level events. Every species faces this differently. You must demonstrate the quality that truly defines your kind. The humans exchanged glances. What exactly are we supposed to do? Maria asked. That is for you to determine, Keylorn replied. Begin when ready. The 3 humans approached the pedestal. Previous species must have treated this as a technical challenge, Alan reasoned. A test of their ability to survive catastrophe. Owen nodded. But survival alone isn't enough. There's something else they're looking for. Maria studied the device. Maybe it's not about what we do, but how we do it. Alan touched the device, and suddenly they were somewhere else. They stood on a hill overlooking a burning city. The sky was dark with smoke, and in the distance, they could see waves hundreds of feet high approaching the coast. "It's Earth," Maria gasped, "or a simulation of it." More disasters appeared: disease, famine, asteroids. Everything that could destroy humanity happened at once. "We can't stop all of this," Owen said, watching the destruction. "It's too much." "I don't think we're meant to," Alan replied. "Other species probably tried to solve each disaster using technology or evacuation plans. But that's not the real test," Maria realized. "Look at the people. In the simulation, humans fought, and died. But among the chaos, there were moments of humanity. People helping strangers, comforting children, sharing what little they had." "That's it," Maria said. "It's not about surviving physically. It's about who we remain when everything is lost." They walked into the chaos of the simulation. Instead of trying to stop the disasters, they helped the simulated humans. They comforted the dying, organized survivors, and preserved knowledge and art. "Even facing extinction," Owen said as they worked, "we remain human." Hours passed in the simulation. Finally, as the last city fell, the three stood together on a hilltop, watching the sun rise over a devastated world. "We start again," Maria said simply. "We rebuild. We remember who we were," Alan added, "and we carry that forward. We adapt and survive," Owen finished, "not just as bodies, but as a culture, as an idea." The simulation faded. They stood again in the chamber. Complete silence had fallen over the observation gallery. Killorn stared at them, its blue skin now almost white. On the wall, the scoring display showed something no one had seen before: 100%. Killorn's voice shook slightly. "This is impossible. The test cannot be completed perfectly." One of the robed aliens stepped forward. "Yet they have done it. There must be an error," Killorn insisted. "I demand a review of their performance. Perhaps they cheated somehow." "We followed every rule," Owen said calmly. "We simply refuse to accept your built-in limitations." "We saw the test for what it was," Maria added. "Not just a measure of ability, but of character." The robed alien studied them. "The Council will need to address this unprecedented situation. Until then, you will remain here." As they were led away, whispers followed them through the corridors of the station. The impossible had happened. A species had finally aced the test. The humans waited 3 days. They were kept in comfortable quarters but were not allowed to speak with anyone except their guards. On the 4th day, a new alien arrived at the station. This alien was unlike any they had seen before. It moved like flowing water, its body shifting between solid and liquid states. When it spoke, its voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. "I am Senior Council Member Vestra," it said as it entered their quarters. "I have reviewed your test results personally." The 3 humans stood to greet it. "And what have you decided?" Owen asked. "First, I must confirm something," Vestra replied. "Did you realize the test was designed to be impossible to complete perfectly?" The humans exchanged glances. "We suspected as much," Maria answered honestly. "Yet you proceeded anyway," Vestra observed. "Interesting." Ellen stepped forward. "Why design a test no one can pass?" Vestra was silent for a moment. Then, surprisingly, it laughed. A sound like distant bells. "The truth, humans, is that the Galactic Cooperative has existed for 50,000 years. In that time, we developed a system that ensures stability. New species are welcomed, but they must understand their place." "Their place beneath you," Owen said flatly. "Precisely," Vestra confirmed. "The threshold test was designed to identify species advanced enough to join but not advanced enough to challenge the established order. A perfect score was considered mathematically impossible." "You rigged the test," Maria said. We created a balanced system, Vestra corrected. Each new species is shown that they have weaknesses, areas where they need guidance from more established members of the cooperative. Creating dependency, Owen noted. Creating harmony, Vestra countered. Or so we thought. The alien moved around the room, its form rippling. In 50,000 years, no species has questioned the fundamental design of the test itself. They accepted the limitations we built into it. They played by our rules. We played by your rules too, Alan pointed out. We just found solutions you didn't anticipate. And that is what makes humans remarkable, Vestra said. You did not break our rules. You transcended them. You saw the boundaries as challenges rather than limitations. The alien gestured, and a wall became transparent, revealing the station beyond. Hundreds of aliens had gathered, waiting. Your performance has created quite a stir, Vestra continued. Many fear what it means. Some demand you be restricted or even removed from consideration. And what do you think? Maria asked quietly. Vestra's form solidified slightly. I think the cooperative has grown stagnant. We created a system that rewards compliance and punishes innovation. Perhaps that is why we have made so little progress in recent millennia. The alien moved toward the door. The Council has voted. Earth will be granted immediate full membership in the Galactic Cooperative, not the probationary status usually given to new species. The humans were speechless. Additionally, Vestra continued, we would like you to help revise the threshold test. It seems it needs updating. 2 weeks later, the humans boarded a ship bound for Earth. They carried with them agreements, technologies, and knowledge beyond anything humanity had imagined. As they approached Earth, they saw their home planet from space, a blue marble hanging in the darkness. Do you think we changed things? Maria asked softly. For humanity, certainly, Ellen replied. But for the galaxy, that remains to be seen. Owen smiled. At the very least, we showed them something new. Sometimes that's all it takes to start a revolution. 6 months after their return, the first aliens arrived on Earth as official representatives, and human educators began traveling to other worlds, helping species prepare for their own threshold tests. The impossible test had been aced, the rules had changed, and humanity had found its place among the stars, not as followers, but as equals. As Vestra had put it before they left, you humans have a saying that fits this situation perfectly. Sometimes you need to break the system to fix it. The age of human isolation was over. The age of true cooperation had begun.